people have been going missing at Lake Superior. Something's beneath the ice. Sheriff Kate Wilkins could taste the coming snow on the air as she made her morning rounds through Whitefish Bay. The Michigan town, population 823 according to the faded sign at its limits, sat hunched against Lake Superior's southern shore like a child bracing against a bully's blow. January had been cruel this year, temperatures dropping to record lows, ice forming thicker on the Great Lake than anyone could remember. "Morning, Sheriff," called Harold from the hardware store, breath clouding dense white in the brittle air. "They're saying another 8 inches tonight." Kate nodded, tucking her gloved hands deeper into her coat pockets. "Got the plows ready. Town council approved the overtime. Good thing. Folks are saying this winter's different, meaner." Kate had heard the same whispers all week. Superstition took root easily during Superior winters, when darkness stretched long and bitter cold kept people isolated. 22 years in law enforcement, 15 as sheriff, had taught her that cabin fever bred wild thoughts. "Just a cold snap," she assured him, though something about this winter did feel wrong. The ice had formed too quickly, too thick. Even the old-timers were uneasy. Her radio crackled. "Sheriff, you there?" The voice belonged to Deputy Jensen, her newest hire. "Go ahead." "Ma'am, Roy Hansen's wife just called. Says he didn't come home from ice fishing last night." Kate felt the first prickle of unease. Roy Hansen was no amateur. Born and raised on Superior shores, the man could practically smell thin ice. "Tell her I'm on my way," to check his usual spot. "And Jensen? Call Michaels and Cooper. Have them meet me at the North Shore access point." An hour later, Kate stood beside Roy's abandoned ice shanty, a portable canvas shelter atop 28 inches of solid ice. Inside, everything appeared normal. Heaters still running, tackle box open, thermos half full of coffee gone cold. The only sign of disturbance was Roy's fishing line, still threaded through a hole in the ice, slack and undisturbed. No signs of struggle, Deputy Michaels noted, scanning the interior with his flashlight. Could he have walked off? Maybe fell through somewhere else? Kate shook her head. In the dark? Roy knows better. She stepped outside, surveying the blank white expanse. Fresh snow had covered any tracks from the previous night. Cooper called from 30 yards away. "Sheriff, you need to see this." Kate trudged through knee-deep snow toward her deputy. He stood at the edge of something that didn't make sense. A perfect circle cut into the ice, roughly 6 feet in diameter. The edges were too precise, too clean. "What the hell could make a cut like that?" Cooper asked. "It's like someone used a giant cookie cutter." Kate knelt beside the hole, now frozen over, with a thin layer of new ice. Around its edge, strange crystalline formations jutted upward, delicate, geometric structures, unlike any natural ice formation she'd seen in her decades on Superior. Is that where he fell in? Michaels had joined them, breath coming in sharp white puffs. Maybe. Kate touched one of the crystal formations. It didn't feel like normal ice, colder somehow, if that were possible. The formation crumbled beneath her gloved finger, dissolving into powder that seemed to evaporate rather than melt. "We need to get the dive team out here," she said, standing. Though if he went in this water last night, they all knew what that meant. Lake Superior killed quickly in January. Hypothermia took hold in minutes. By sunset, the county dive team had found nothing. No body, no fishing gear, no evidence. Roy Hansen had fallen through the ice at all. The peculiar hole had yielded no clues. The new ice covering it contained no traces of fabric or blood. Nothing to suggest a man had passed through. At the station, Kate delivered the news to Maria Hansen, Roy's wife of 32 years. The woman sat rigid in the plastic chair across from Kate's desk, fingers worrying the fringe of her scarf. "He knows the ice," Maria insisted. "Roy wouldn't just fall in. We're listing him as a missing person," Kate said. "We'll keep searching when light permits tomorrow." "This isn't like him, Kate." Maria's eyes, red-rimmed from crying, fixed on her with sudden intensity. "Something took him." Kate maintained her professional calm. "We don't have any evidence of foul play, Maria. I don't mean a person. Maria leaned forward. Old Joe Redfoot came by the house this morning, said his grandmother used to warn about winters when the ice gets too thick, said something about the cold that waits underneath. Kate suppressed a sigh. Joe Redfoot's grandmother had been the town's most respected Ojibwe elder before her death last autumn, but Joe himself was known for embellishing the tribe's legends after a few drinks. "We'll find him, Maria. I promise we'll keep looking." After Maria left, Kate remained at her desk, staring at Roy's file. The strange circular hole nagged at her. She'd seen ice part in many ways over her years on Superior, jagged breaks, long cracks, the melted rings around fishing holes, but never a perfect circle with those bizarre crystal formations. She was about to leave when the phone rang. Sheriff Wilkins. "Kate, it's Dr. Larson from the university." The meteorologist occasionally consulted with her department on weather-related accidents. "I got your message about the ice samples. What did you find?" "Well, that's why I'm calling. Those ice crystals you collected, they're not normal." Kate's skin prickled. "How so?" "The molecular structure is unusual, and they're cold, Kate, much colder than they should be. We measured them at nearly 30 degrees below the surrounding ice. That's not possible under normal thermal laws." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I've never seen anything like this in 20 years of studying ice formation. Whatever made those crystals, it's not a natural process I'm familiar with." After hanging up, Kate drove back to the lake. Night had fallen completely now, the vast frozen surface reflecting starlight in ghostly blue-white. She parked at the access point and walked out to where Roy's shanty had been, now removed for evidence. The hole remained, though Park Services had placed warning markers around it. Kate knelt beside it, shining her flashlight on the strange crystal formations. They seemed to have grown since morning, spreading outward in geometric patterns. As she studied them, a movement caught her eye. Something beneath the newly formed ice covering the hole. A subtle shift of light, a suggestion of motion in the black water below. She leaned closer, focusing her light directly downward. For a breathless moment, she thought she saw points of light moving in the depths, an arrangement of pale illumination, flowing in a deliberate pattern. But when she blinked and looked again, there was only the darkness of Superior's waters. Standing, Kate shook off the unease climbing her spine. 22 years in law enforcement had taught her another lesson. There was always a rational explanation. People didn't just vanish. The cold didn't hunger. As she walked back to her vehicle, she didn't notice the thin sheen of frost forming on her boot prints, spreading outward in perfect circles. 2 weeks after Roy Hansen's disappearance, Sheriff Kate Wilkins stood at the base of Copper Cliff, staring up at abandoned climbing gear, still attached to the sheer rock face. Yellow police tape fluttered in the bitter wind coming off Lake Superior, which stretched vast and frozen behind her. "Equipment's all top-notch," said Deputy Cooper, examining a carabiner. "These weren't amateurs. Andrea Kowalski and James Freeman," Kate said. "Experienced climbers from Marquette. Their car's been in the trailhead parking lot for 3 days. The climbing route was only half completed. Ropes and pitons marking the pair's path up the cliff until they simply stopped. No signs of a fall, no bodies below, just gear left behind, as if the climbers had vanished mid-ascent." "Could they have topped out another way?" Cooper asked. Kate shook her head. Park ranger checked the summit. No footprints in the snow up there. She scanned the cliff face again, then froze. Near where the climbing gear ended, a perfect circular indentation cut into the rock face, roughly 5 feet in diameter, as if a giant drill had bored into the cliff and then stopped. "Cooper, get me closer to that." Back at the station that evening, Kate pinned photos of the cliff anomaly next to images from Roy Hansen's disappearance. The similarity was undeniable. The same perfect circle, the same crystalline formations along the edges, appearing this time in frost-coated rock rather than ice. 3 people in 2 weeks, murmured Deputy Jensen, staring at the board. "And now Bill Hargrove hasn't reported in." Kate turned sharply. "The park ranger? Since when?" "Call came in while you were at the cliff. He was doing the winter wildlife survey in the northeast quadrant. Missed 2 scheduled radio check-ins. Kate felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Get a search team together. I want them ready at first light. The station door opened, bringing a blast of Arctic air and a tall bearded man carrying an expensive-looking equipment case. He stamped snow from his boots, surveying the room with keen eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Sheriff Wilkins? His voice carried the crisp enunciation of academia. I'm Professor Alan Blackwood, Limnology Department at Michigan Tech. I was hoping to speak with you about the anomalous ice formations. Before Kate could respond, a woman entered behind him, younger, with a camera bag slung over her shoulder and determination in her stride. And I'm Mia Parker, she announced. I'm filming a documentary on climate change impacts on the Great Lakes. She glanced at the evidence board. But I'm thinking there might be a more urgent story developing here. Professor Blackwood knelt at the edge of the circular hole, where Roy Hansen had disappeared, now expanded to nearly 8 feet in diameter. The strange crystalline formations had continued to grow despite attempts to remove them. Extraordinary, he murmured, carefully extracting a sample with specialized tools. I've studied Superior for 30 years and never seen anything like this. Kate watched him work, arms crossed against the cold. Nearby, Mia Parker filmed the process, occasionally asking questions about the lake's properties. The hole in the cliff face showed identical crystalline patterns, Kate said. How is that possible, if this is some kind of ice phenomenon? Blackwood looked troubled. It shouldn't be. These formations shouldn't exist at all, frankly. He held up a small device. The temperature around these crystals is -70 Celsius. That's colder than the ambient temperature, by nearly 50 degrees. Is that normal? Kate asked. It's thermodynamically impossible, Blackwood replied. These crystals should be absorbing heat from their surroundings, not somehow becoming colder. He carefully placed samples in a specialized container. Something is actively removing thermal energy from this area. That defies everything we understand about energy transfer. A shout from the shoreline interrupted them. Deputy Michaels was waving frantically. Sheriff, we found Hargrove's gear. Bill Hargrove's backpack, radio, and snowshoes lay scattered near the shore, half buried in fresh snow. And 10 feet away, another perfect circle, this one cutting through both ice and the rocky shoreline below, as if whatever made it cared nothing for the difference in materials. 3 locations, 4 missing people, Kate said grimly. This isn't coincidence. 5 missing, corrected Michaels. Just got word. Lisa Kazan, 16, went skating last night and never came home. Kate felt the weight of dread settling deeper. Where? East Bay, near the old lighthouse. Let me guess. Professor Blackwood said quietly. Another circular hole in the ice? That evening, the community center overflowed with concerned residents. Kate stood before them, maintaining a calm she didn't feel. We're implementing a buddy system for all lake activities, she announced. No one goes on the ice alone, for any reason. We've got county resources coming in to help with the search. What about the circles? Someone called out. Everyone's talking about them. We have an expert from Michigan Tech investigating the ice anomalies. Kate gestured toward Blackwood, who nodded from the side of the room. It's the winter beast, shouted an elderly voice from the back. All heads turned to see Joe Redfoot, his weathered face flushed with emotion or alcohol, possibly both. My grandmother warned us. When the ice grows too thick, it wakes up. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. That's enough, Joe, Kate said firmly. We're dealing with a natural phenomenon and missing persons cases. Natural? Joe laughed bitterly. Ask your scientist if what he's seeing is natural. Ask him if he's ever seen ice that steals heat instead of melting from it. Uncomfortable silence fell over the room. We'll find our missing people, Kate asserted, though doubt gnawed at her. In the meantime, stay safe, stay together, and report anything unusual immediately. After the meeting, Mia Parker approached Kate with a folder of papers. Sheriff, I've been researching local history, she said. Look at these newspaper archives from Kate flipped through photocopied headlines. 3 vanish from Frozen Bay. Mysterious holes baffle authorities. Search called off for missing hikers. Same pattern, Mia continued. Perfect circles, strange ice, multiple disappearances, and here, she pointed to another clipping from 1925, then 1875. Every 50 years, Sheriff. Like clockwork. Kate stared at the evidence, mind racing. Before she could respond, Sam Redfoot approached. Joe's son, a sober counterpoint to his father's volatility. In his early 40s, Sam managed the cultural center that preserved Ojibwe traditions. Sheriff Wilkins, he said quietly, we need to talk about what's happening. Your father already shared his thoughts, Kate replied. My father drowns his grief in whiskey, Sam said. But that doesn't mean he's wrong. My grandmother was the keeper of our stories. Before she died, she made me memorize everything about the cold that hungers. Something in his steady gaze made Kate listen. According to our traditions, Sam continued, there's something ancient in Superior's deepest part, not a spirit or monster in the way white stories would tell it. Something older. From before, it sleeps for decades, but when the ice grows unusually thick, when the cold penetrates deep enough, he trailed off. It wakes up, Mia finished. Sam nodded. And it feeds. Kate wanted to dismiss it as superstition, but the photos spread before her. Identical phenomena spanning 150 years made that increasingly difficult. I need evidence, not legends, she said finally. Then look at this. Professor Blackwood had joined them. Laptop open to security footage from the community ice rink. Lisa Kazan's disappearance. We got lucky. The rink's camera was working. The grainy nighttime footage showed the teenage girl skating alone under the floodlights. At first, nothing seemed amiss. Then, gradually, the ice beneath her began to glow with a subtle, pulsing luminescence. Lisa stopped skating, staring downward. She circled the glowing spot, then knelt, placing her hand flat against the ice. For nearly a minute, she remained motionless. Then, as if responding to some inaudible call, she stood and skated directly toward the darkened edge of the rink, disappearing from the camera's view. We found another circle there this morning, Blackwood said softly. Perfectly round, cutting through both ice and earth, and the temperature around it was 90 degrees below zero. Kate looked from the footage to the historical records to Sam's solemn face. For the first time in her career, she confronted something that defied rational explanation. Okay, she said finally. I think we need to pool our resources. Professor, I want everything you can tell me about what's happening scientifically. Mia, dig deeper into those historical patterns. And Sam, she met his eyes. I need to know everything your grandmother told you about this thing. Sam nodded gravely. She called it the cold that hungers, Sheriff. But she had another name for it too. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The devourer of heat. The fluorescent lights of Whitefish Bay's small sheriff's office buzzed overhead as Kate cleared a space on the conference room wall. 5 photographs now hung in a row. Roy Hansen, Andrea Kowalski, James Freeman, Bill Hargrove, and Lisa Kazan, each face staring back at her with the silent accusation of the missing. Officially, we're calling this a specialized environmental response team, Kate said, turning to face the 3 people seated around the table. Unofficially, we're looking for connections no one else is seeing. Professor Blackwood adjusted his glasses, laptop open before him. Mia Parker's digital recorder sat in the center of the table, red light blinking. Sam Redfoot remained perfectly still, hands folded, his expression unreadable. I've compiled the thermal readings from all 5 sites, Blackwood began, pulling up charts on his computer. The anomalies are expanding. The first site, Roy Hansen's, started at roughly -60 Celsius. The most recent one, where Lisa disappeared, bottomed out my equipment at -90. Getting colder, Kate murmured. Impossible, really, Blackwood continued. These areas should be transferring energy to their surroundings, reaching equilibrium. Instead, they're actively drawing heat inward. It's like watching water flow uphill. Mia leaned forward. I've been researching the historical cases. In 1975, 7 people vanished over 3 weeks. In 1925, 11 over a month. In 1875, records are spotty, but at least 15 disappeared. It's escalating, Kate said. More disappearances each cycle. It's hungry, Sam interjected quietly. All eyes turned to him. After 50 years of hibernation, it needs to feed. Kate had spent 22 years dealing in facts, evidence, the concrete realities of law enforcement. But something about Sam's calm certainty eroded her skepticism. "Tell us everything your grandmother shared," she said. Sam unfolded a leather pouch, extracting what appeared to be a small, very old notebook bound in hide. My grandmother was born in She received these stories from her grandmother, who witnessed the 1875 awakening. These are her original notes. He carefully opened the fragile pages. In our language, the entity is called Goarwanakwe, the one who steals warmth. It is not a spirit or monotony in the traditional sense. Grandmother believed it was something from before humans, before most life on Earth. Some kind of ancient organism, Blackwood suggested. More than that, in the deepest part of Kichigami, Lake Superior, there is a place colder than ice, colder than the space between stars. There, it sleeps. But when winters grow severe, when the ice thickens beyond a certain point, the cold penetrates deep enough to stir it. And then it wakes up and takes people, Kate asked. Sam shook his head. It doesn't want people, specifically. It wants heat. Living things are concentrated sources of thermal energy. It harvests them. Mia's face paled. Harvests? You mean? It doesn't kill. Not exactly. It preserves. Takes them somewhere cold and extracts their heat slowly, like a spider with preserved prey. Kate felt nausea rising. You're saying the missing people could still be alive? In a sense, Sam's expression darkened. Grandmother said, those taken by Goarwanakwe exist in a state between living and not living, suspended, their warmth feeding it for months. Silence fell over the room as they absorbed this horror. Blackwood cleared his throat. From a scientific perspective, this is difficult to accept, but the thermal readings are undeniable. Something is extracting heat, energy in violation of basic physical laws. What about the circles? Kate asked. They appear in ice, rock, soil, perfectly round in every material. That's its doorway, Sam said. How it reaches through from below. The circles are thinner places in the world, where it can extend itself upward, like a predator's feeding tube. Blackwood mused, then caught himself. Theoretically speaking, Kate stared at the map where they'd marked each disappearance site. If this thing is real, how do we fight it? How did people stop it during previous cycles? They didn't, Sam said simply. It took what it needed, then returned to hibernation. There must be something in the historical record, Mia insisted, flipping through her notes. Some way people protected themselves. Buddy system, Sam said. Always travel together. It prefers isolated prey, and heat maintain heat sources, fires, primarily in the old days. That's why it's targeting ice fishermen, solo hikers, people alone in the cold, Kate realized. Exactly, Sam nodded. But there's more. My grandmother believed it follows a cycle. The feeding period lasts about 3 weeks. Then comes what she called the gathering, when it uses all the energy it's harvested for some greater purpose. What purpose? Kate asked. Sam's expression grew troubled. Reproduction. Later that afternoon, Kate found herself alone in her office with Mia, reviewing security footage from cameras they'd installed around the lake. I found something else in my research, Mia said, sliding a folder across the desk. Classified government documents from 1957. They were doing deep water research in Superior. Something about the Cold War, monitoring for Soviet submarines. Kate flipped through the photocopied pages, heavily redacted with black marker. How did you get these? Freedom of Information Act request for my documentary. Most was blacked out, but look at this. She pointed to a paragraph near the end. Research submersible bluefin encountered redacted at depth of 1,333 feet in eastern Superior Basin. Contact with anomalous biological structure resulted in catastrophic system failure and loss of redacted. Recovery operation terminated. Project Coldwater classified Level 4 restricted. They found something down there, Kate murmured. And whatever it was, it scared them enough to shut down the entire program. Mia took back the document. I think they encountered your Giwanikwi, or part of it. Kate was about to respond when her radio crackled. Sheriff, this is Jensen. Temperature just dropped 15 degrees in 10 minutes. Barometer's going crazy. Kate moved to the window. Dark clouds had gathered over the lake with unnatural speed, swirling in patterns she'd never seen before. Get everyone inside, she ordered into the radio. Full storm protocol. There's something else. Jensen's voice crackled with static. Professor Blackwood's monitoring equipment just picked up seismic activity under the lake. He says it's big, whatever it is, moving. The task force reconvened at the lakeside research station Blackwood had established. Outside, wind howled as the temperature plummeted toward 30 below. The readings are off the chart, Blackwood said, showing them a laptop display of chaotic patterns. It's like an earthquake, but localized and moving in a deliberate pattern. Where? Kate demanded. Deep under the eastern basin, heading toward shore, toward us. He pulled up another screen, showing thermal imaging of the lake. And look at this. Heat signature dropping throughout the water column. The entire basin is getting colder. Far colder than natural processes could explain. Sam stared out the window at the churning lake. It's gathering strength. Preparing. For what? Mia asked. The harvest is almost complete. Now comes the purpose. Kate made a decision. We need to evacuate the town. Get everyone to Marquette or Sault Ste. Marie until this cycle passes. The roads are already impassable, Blackwood pointed out. This storm didn't come from any weather system. It formed directly over the lake in minutes. We're cut off. A heavy silence settled over the room, broken only by the howl of unnatural wind. Then we warn everyone to stay inside, away from the lake, Kate said finally, and we figure out if there's any way to fight this thing. Fight it? Blackwood looked skeptical. Sheriff, we don't even understand what it is yet. Then we'd better figure it out fast, Kate replied, staring at the monitoring equipment as it tracked something massive moving beneath Lake Superior's frozen surface, because I have a feeling it's done hibernating. There's something else you should know, Sam said, his voice unusually hesitant. Something personal. Kate turned to him, brow furrowed. The 1975 cycle. One of the missing was a man named David Wilkins. According to my grandmother's records, he was one of the last taken. Kate felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath her. My brother, she whispered. I was only 7 when he disappeared. They said he fell through the ice. That's why you became sheriff, Mia realized. To find answers. Kate nodded numbly. All these years, I thought it was just an accident. There's more, Sam continued gently. Grandmother believed those taken during one cycle are kept, preserved. If any part of them remain, you're saying my brother could still be down there. After 50 years? Kate's voice cracked with disbelief and horror. Not alive as we understand it, Sam cautioned, but not fully gone either. Kate turned away, struggling to maintain composure. Through the window, she could see the storm intensifying. Unnatural lightning flashing deep purple against the snow-filled sky. We need to look at the underwater camera feeds, she said finally, her voice steady once more. If something's moving down there, I want to see it. They gathered around Blackwood's largest monitor as he pulled up feeds from cameras they'd placed beneath the ice. Most of these are in shallower water, he explained, but I put 2 in deeper. His voice cut off as the deepest camera feed flickered to life. In the murky distance, something moved, an enormous pale shape, its geometry complex and impossible, with structures that seemed to phase between solid and translucent. As they watched in horrified silence, appendages that defied conventional anatomy extended and retracted in patterns, suggesting terrible purpose. My God, whispered Blackwood. It's architectural, like a living structure. I count at least 8, murmured Mia, pointing to distinct moving sections. Are those separate organisms or parts of one entity? Sam's face had gone ashen. The gathering has begun, he said. It's bringing them all together now. Bringing what together? Kate demanded. The Taken, Sam replied, his eyes never leaving the screen. All of them. Every cycle. It's preparing for the birth. On the monitor, the vast pale shape pulsed with internal light, and for a brief moment, they could see what appeared to be human-sized cocoons embedded within its translucent tissue. Dozens of them, perhaps hundreds. Kate thought she might be sick. We need to stop it, she whispered. Whatever it takes. As if responding to her words, the creature on the screen suddenly stilled. Then, with horrifying deliberation, it turned toward the camera. The feed distorted, images breaking apart into static and impossible geometries. Just before the signal cut out entirely, they all saw it. A circular opening forming in the creature's central mass, expanding outward in a perfect ring. The screen went black. It knows we're watching, Blackwood said, voice trembling. Outside, the storm reached new intensity. Snow and ice driving horizontally past the windows. The temperature read out on Blackwood's equipment dropped another 10 degrees. It's coming, Sam whispered. Professor Blackwood's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the microscope. The cold had crept into the laboratory, despite the heaters running at maximum capacity. Outside, Whitefish Bay endured its third day of the unnatural storm, temperatures hovering at 40 below zero. Look, he said, stepping aside to let Kate peer into the eyepiece. The ice samples from the circle sites. Kate bent to the microscope. What she saw made little sense at first. Geometric structures that seemed too precise to be natural. Hexagonal patterns repeating at multiple scales, like some impossible fractal. What am I looking at? She asked. That's the problem, Blackwood replied, rubbing his eyes beneath his glasses. I don't know. These aren't ice crystals, at least not any form known to science. They're more like colonies. Colonies, like bacteria. Similar principle, but these are nothing like terrestrial microorganisms. He pulled up images on his computer. They appear to be extremophiles adapted for temperatures approaching absolute zero. Each unit is connected to the others in a network that extends throughout the sample. They're communicating somehow. Are they alive? Kate asked. Blackwood's expression was troubled. By any conventional definition, yes. They metabolize, respond to stimuli, and appear to reproduce. But their biochemistry is unlike anything in the scientific record. Sam entered the laboratory, carrying a thermos of coffee. The ancients knew, he said quietly. The old stories say Gidwanakwe is not one being but many, acting as one. A colonial organism, Blackwood nodded. Like coral polyps, or Portuguese man-o'-war. Individually simple, but capable of complex behaviors when networked. And you're saying these things are what's taking people? Kate asked. I believe they're extensions of the entity, Blackwood said. Think of them as its cellular structure, but on a larger scale. The massive formation we saw on the underwater camera would be composed of billions of these units, working in concert. Mia joined them, laptop in hand. I've analyzed the historical temperature data. Every 50-year cycle correlates exactly with periods of unusually thick ice coverage on Superior. She pulled up a chart. The winter of 1875, 1925, all record-breaking cold snaps that created ice more than 30 inches thick across the entire lake. It needs the cold, Sam said. Extreme cold, beyond what's normal, even for Superior winters. That's when it can extend itself upward through the ice. Kate studied the microscopic images. A terrible realization forming. You said these organisms are adapted for temperatures approaching absolute zero. Could they be extraterrestrial? The room fell silent. I've been avoiding that conclusion, Blackwood admitted finally. But yes, it's a possibility we have to consider. These organisms could represent a biology that evolved under conditions entirely different from Earth's. Like Europa, Mia suggested. Jupiter's moon. Scientists believe it has a subsurface ocean beneath miles of ice, or somewhere much farther away, Blackwood said. These organisms manipulate thermal energy in ways that defy our understanding of physics. They could have evolved in an environment utterly alien to us. How would they get here? Kate asked. Meteorite impact, perhaps. Superior was formed by ancient volcanic activity, but parts of the basin show evidence of meteorite strikes dating back billions of years. Blackwood gestured to the microscope. These organisms could have arrived when Earth was young, found the deep, cold waters of what would become Lake Superior, and remained there, dormant for eons, until conditions matched their needs, Sam added. The cycles of extreme cold. Kate tried to process this information. So we're dealing with an ancient, possibly alien colonial organism that awakens during extreme cold to harvest thermal energy from living creatures? That's my working theory, Blackwood confirmed. And based on the underwater footage and historical patterns, it's building towards something. Reproduction, Sam said grimly. The 50-year cycle isn't random. My grandmother believed it was preparing for something, a great spawning. But what does it do with the people it takes? Kate pressed. Those cocoon-like structures we saw. Sam's expression darkened. It preserves them, uses them. Their body heat is extracted over months, not minutes. The thermal energy sustains the spawning process. And you think my brother could still be? Kate couldn't finish the sentence. Grandmother believed those taken aren't truly dead, but exist in a state of suspended animation. Their consciousness might even remain intact, in some form. Kate turned away. The implications too horrific to contemplate. We need to understand what triggers the final phase, Blackwood said, redirecting the conversation. If this is building toward reproduction, there must be environmental cues it's responding to. The temperature keeps dropping, Mia noted. Each site gets colder than the last. Maybe it needs to reach some critical threshold, or build up enough thermal energy from its victims, Blackwood suggested reluctantly. A knock at the laboratory door interrupted them. Deputy Jensen entered, his expression grim. Sheriff, we've got a situation at the high school. People are reporting strange lights under the ice of the bay. They're visible from the gym windows. How many witnesses? Kate asked, already reaching for her coat. At least 20. And Sheriff, Jensen hesitated. 3 people have walked out onto the ice already. We couldn't stop them. They just stared at the lights and started walking. The high school gymnasium had become Whitefish Bay's emergency shelter, housing nearly 200 residents. As the supernatural storm raged outside, when Kate's team arrived, a crowd had gathered at the windows facing the lake. They started about an hour ago, explained the school principal, leading them to the window. Just faint at first, but they're getting brighter. Kate looked out across the frozen expanse of the bay. Through the driving snow, she could see them, pulses of pale blue-white light, moving beneath the ice in complex, almost hypnotic patterns. They flowed like silent lightning, forming geometric shapes before dissolving and reforming. It's communicating, Sam whispered beside her. Calling. Who went out there? Kate demanded. Frank Miller, Sue Garland, and young Peter Walsh. Someone answered. They just stopped talking mid-sentence, walked outside, wouldn't respond to anyone. Like Lisa Cousin, Mia murmured, recording the lights with her camera. Professor Blackwood had set up instruments near the window. The energy readings are extraordinary, he reported. Those lights are emitting radiation in spectrums I can't even identify. We need to warn everyone, Kate said. No one looks directly at the lights. Cover the windows. Too late, Sam said softly, pointing. Kate turned to see several people in the crowd, staring fixedly at the phenomenon, their expressions blank. As she watched, one woman began walking stiffly toward the exit. Stop her, Kate shouted. Deputies moved to intercept the woman, but 3 more people started moving in the same mechanical fashion. Within seconds, a dozen residents were walking toward the doors. Get everyone away from the windows, Kate ordered. Now, chaos erupted as deputies and volunteers herded people to the interior of the gymnasium. Blackout curtains were hastily hung over the windows, but not before several more residents fell under the strange influence of the lights. We had to physically restrain 8 people, Jensen reported afterward. They're not violent, just determined. They don't respond to questions. Their skin is cold to the touch, pupils dilated. It's selecting them, Sam said, calling the ones it wants. Why these specific people? Kate asked. I don't know, Sam admitted. But there must be a pattern. Mia had been documenting the affected residents. I think I see it, she said. They're all roughly the same age, between 30 and 50, and they all grew up here, in Whitefish Bay. Children of the last cycle, Sam realized. Born during or shortly after the 1975 awakening. A terrible understanding dawned on Kate. It tagged them somehow. 50 years ago, it's been waiting for them to mature. But why? Blackwood asked. The cocoons we saw, Kate said. What if they're not just for harvesting heat? What if they serve another purpose? Incubation, Blackwood whispered, the color draining from his face. It's not just taking people for their thermal energy. It's using them as hosts. Back in the laboratory, Blackwood conducted tests on blood samples from the entranced residents. There's something in their bloodstream, he announced, staring at the microscopic structures identical to what we found in the ice samples. They've been dormant, probably for decades, but now they're active. How is that possible? Kate demanded. These people weren't taken 50 years ago. No, but their parents were in Whitefish Bay during the last cycle. Mia had been researching the affected residents' backgrounds. Every single one had at least one parent living here in 1975. It infected them, Sam said. Not enough to take them, just enough to mark their offspring. The organisms can pass through the placental barrier, Blackwood theorized. They remained dormant in these people's systems, their entire lives, waiting for the next cycle, when conditions would be right for activation. And now it's calling them home, Kate said grimly, to complete whatever reproductive process it's planning. Blackwood pulled up the underwater camera footage they'd recovered, focusing on the cocoon-like structures. I've enhanced this as much as possible. Look at the internal composition. The enhanced image revealed that each cocoon contained what appeared to be a human form, but with strange crystalline growths extending throughout the body. It's not just preserving them, Blackwood said quietly. It's transforming them, using human biological material as a component in its reproductive process. My brother, Kate whispered. All of them, for 50 years. The final stage must be approaching, Sam said. The lights, the calling of the marked ones. These are the last preparations before the spawning. How do we stop it? Kate asked, her voice hardening with resolve. I don't know if we can, Blackwood admitted. We're dealing with an organism that has likely existed for millions of years, with biology and physics we barely comprehend. There must be something, Kate insisted. Every living thing has weaknesses, vulnerabilities. They fell silent, each contemplating the seemingly impossible challenge before them. The cold, Mia said suddenly. It needs the cold, thrives in it. So heat, Kate suggested. Could extreme heat harm it? Theoretically, Blackwood nodded slowly. These organisms exist in a state that requires temperatures far below freezing. Rapid thermal shock could potentially disrupt their cellular structures. But we'd need massive amounts of heat, Sam pointed out, and a way to deliver it to the depths of the lake. Kate stared at the map of Whitefish Bay pinned to the wall, her eyes fixing on a feature at the eastern edge of town. The old copper mine, she said. The deepest shaft extends under the lake bed. My brother used to tell me stories about how the miners hit an underwater spring once, flooded the lower levels. A direct access point, Blackwood realized. If we could generate enough heat at the bottom of that shaft, what about the people it's already taken? Mia asked. If they're still preserved somehow. Kate's expression hardened. If my brother has been in one of those cocoons for 50 years, what's left of him isn't human anymore. The kindest thing we could do is end it. As she spoke, the building's lights flickered, then went out completely. Emergency generators hummed to life, providing minimal illumination. Power grids down, Jensen reported from the doorway. Whole town's dark, and the temperature's still dropping, -50 and falling. Through the laboratory's small window, They could see the lights beneath the ice had grown dramatically brighter, pulsing in faster, more complex patterns. The storm had intensified, snow and ice particles swirling in unnatural formations. "It's starting," Sam whispered. Whitefish Bay vanished beneath the storm. Snow fell so densely it created whiteout conditions even at midday. Driven by winds that howled with almost sentient rage, the temperature had plummeted to -63, the coldest recorded in Michigan history by nearly 20 degrees. In the high school gymnasium, now lit only by emergency generators, Kate addressed the frightened townspeople. "The power lines are down across the county," she explained, her breath visible even indoors. "Road crews can't get through from Marquette. We're on our own for at least the next 48 hours. The faces looking back at her were pale, drawn with cold and fear. 12 more residents had fallen into the entranced state, now restrained on cots in the nurse's office. Outside, the strange lights beneath the ice had grown bright enough to illuminate the snow from below, casting eerie, shifting patterns across the white landscape. "The generators will keep the heat running," Kate continued. "Everyone needs to stay inside, away from windows. Do not look at the lights on the bay, under any circumstances." "What's happening, Sheriff?" called someone from the crowd. "This isn't just a storm, is it?" Kate hesitated. How could she explain what they'd discovered? That an ancient, possibly extraterrestrial entity was harvesting people for a reproductive cycle that occurred every 50 years, that it had marked some of them in the womb decades ago. "We're dealing with an environmental anomaly," she said carefully. "Professor Blackwood can explain the scientific aspects." The professor stepped forward, his academic demeanor lending credibility despite the fantastical nature of their situation. "We've identified a previously unknown phenomenon affecting the thermal properties of Lake Superior," he said. "The extreme cold has triggered a reaction in certain microorganisms in the deeper portions of the lake. These organisms emit radiation that can affect human neurological systems, hence our warning about the lights." It wasn't the whole truth, but it wasn't entirely a lie either. "Is it dangerous?" someone asked. "It can be," Blackwood acknowledged. "But as long as everyone remains inside and follows safety protocols, we should be able to wait out the phenomenon." The half-truth sat uneasily with Kate, but panic would help no one. As the meeting dispersed, she gathered her task force in a classroom off the main gymnasium. "The copper mine is our best option," she said, spreading a map across a desk. "The main shaft descends nearly 800 feet, with horizontal tunnels extending under the eastern bay. Abandoned since 1949, Sam added. "My grandfather worked there before the collapse." "Collapse?" Mia asked. "They broke through to an underwater cavity," Sam explained, "flooded the lower levels. 3 men died. The company claimed it was a natural spring, but my grandfather always said the water was too cold, too strange. He quit mining after that." "Another encounter with our friend below," Blackwood murmured. "How do we generate enough heat to damage this thing?" Kate asked. "We're talking about an organism adapted to near absolute zero temperatures." "Thermal shock," Blackwood said. "It's not just about absolute temperature, but the rate of change. A rapid shift from extreme cold to extreme heat could rupture its cellular structures, like pouring boiling water on a frozen windshield," Mia suggested. "Precisely," Blackwood nodded. "We need something that burns hot and fast." "Magnesium," said a new voice from the doorway. They turned to see Roy Henderson, the high school chemistry teacher. I couldn't help overhearing. "If you need extreme heat in a confined space, magnesium is your answer. Burns at over 3,000 degrees Celsius." "Do you have any in the school lab?" Kate asked. "Some, yes, but not enough for whatever you're planning." Roy hesitated. "However, the old fireworks factory at the edge of town used magnesium in their manufacturing process. There could be significant quantities in their storage facility." "That place has been closed for years," Kate said, "but never properly cleared out," Roy pointed out. "The EPA was scheduled to do a hazardous materials removal last summer, but it got delayed." Kate turned to Deputy Jensen. "Take a team, check it out. Be careful, that stuff is dangerously flammable." There's another problem, Blackwood interjected. We need something to trigger the reaction at the right moment, in the right place. A remote detonator. I might be able to help with that, Roy offered. Before I taught chemistry, I worked in mining operations. I know a bit about controlled demolitions. Kate nodded. Good. Work with Professor Blackwood on the technical details. She turned to Sam and Mia. You two, come with me. We need to check the mine entrance. Make sure it's accessible. Sheriff, Blackwood called as they prepared to leave. What about the marked ones? The entranced residents? Kate's expression hardened. Keep them restrained and sedated. If more people start showing symptoms, isolate them immediately. And if they wake up, he asked quietly, then they're not who they were before, she replied grimly. The storm battered them mercilessly as Kate's cruiser inched along the abandoned access road to the copper mine. Visibility extended barely beyond the hood of the vehicle, the headlights reflecting uselessly off the wall of white. The temperature gauge on the dashboard had stopped functioning entirely. It knows, Sam said from the passenger seat, his breath frosting instantly in the air, despite the heater running at maximum. It can sense what we're planning. It's a microorganism, Kate responded, gripping the steering wheel tighter. It doesn't know anything. A colonial microorganism with collective intelligence, Sam corrected. Grandmother said it was old enough to remember when humans first came to these shores, old enough to learn, to adapt. The cruiser's engine sputtered, then caught again. We're almost there, Kate said, peering through the windshield. Should be just ahead on the right. Suddenly, Mia pointed through the passenger window. What's that? Through the curtain of snow, strange blue-white lights pulsed in the forest alongside the road, the same hypnotic patterns they'd seen beneath the ice. Don't look directly at them, Kate warned, accelerating slightly. It's trying to stop us. The lights kept pace with the vehicle, flowing between the trees like liquid electricity. The cruiser's electronics began to malfunction, radio crackling with static, headlights flickering. There, Kate spotted the mine entrance, a dark gash in the hillside partially concealed by decades of vegetation. She swerved toward it, but the engine died completely, just 50 yards short. We'll have to go on foot. Don't look at the lights, whatever happens. They stepped out into the howling storm, instantly assaulted by wind and cold, so severe it burned exposed skin, keeping their eyes fixed on the ground. They pushed forward toward the mine entrance. The lights intensified around them, pulsing faster, more insistently. Kate felt a strange pressure in her mind, an almost irresistible urge to look up, to gaze into the beautiful patterns. Beside her, Mia stumbled, her head beginning to turn toward the lights. No, Sam grabbed her, forcing her face down. Don't look. Together, they half dragged, half carried each other. The final distance to the mine entrance, the rotting timbers of the old mining structure, offered minimal shelter from the storm. But at least here, the lights couldn't reach them directly. It doesn't want us here, Sam panted, brushing snow from his coat. This place is significant. Kate examined the mine entrance. The main tunnel was partially collapsed, but still passable. Ancient rail tracks disappeared into the darkness, rusted from decades of abandonment. We'll need equipment, she said. Lights, rope, protective gear, and a way to transport the magnesium safely. If Henderson can get it from the fireworks factory, Mia reminded her. He will. Kate activated her radio, relieved to find it working inside the mine entrance. Jensen, come in. Status report. Static crackled. Then Jensen's voice broke through, fragmented. Found the magnesium storage room intact. Professor says, enough for what we need. Strange lights outside. Get back to the high school as soon as possible, Kate ordered. And Jensen, don't look at the lights. More static, then. Understood, heading back now. They explored the mine entrance further, finding old equipment still in place. Carts, picks, shovels abandoned when the mine closed. The air grew colder the deeper they ventured, well beyond what would be normal, even for an underground space in winter. The shaft is ahead, Sam said. pointing to where the tunnel opened into a broader chamber. That's where the main elevator would have been. They approached cautiously. The elevator was long gone, leaving an open shaft descending into darkness. Kate shone her flashlight down, but the beam couldn't penetrate to the bottom. 800 feet, she murmured. How do we get down there? Maintenance ladders along the side. Sam pointed to rusted metal rungs embedded in the rock wall. Dangerous after all these years, but possible. And the horizontal tunnels that extend under the lake. 7th level down, according to the old maps. About 600 feet. Kate was about to respond when a sound echoed up from the depths. A hollow, resonant tone, unlike anything she'd ever heard. It wasn't loud, but somehow penetrated to her bones, raising goose flesh across her body. "It knows we're here," Sam whispered. The sound came again, changing pitch in a pattern that suggested communication. The temperature around them dropped sharply, their breath turning to ice crystals that tinkled to the ground like tiny wind chimes. "We need to go," Kate said, backing away from the shaft. Now, they retreated quickly to the entrance, the strange tones following them, growing more insistent. Outside, the storm had intensified beyond anything meteorologically possible. Snow particles driven with such force, they cut exposed skin like tiny razors. They barely made it back to the cruiser, which miraculously started on the first try. As Kate reversed onto the access road, Mia looked back at the mine entrance. "There's something there," she said, her voice tight with fear. Kate glanced in the rearview mirror. Standing, or perhaps floating, at the mine entrance was a humanoid figure composed entirely of crystalline structures, glowing with the same blue-white luminescence they'd seen beneath the ice. It had no discernible face, yet somehow Kate felt it watching them, studying them with ancient intelligence. "Drive," Sam urged. "Now." Kate floored the accelerator, tires spinning on the snow before finding purchase. As they pulled away, the figure remained motionless, observing their retreat. "What was that?" Mia whispered. "A projection," Sam suggested. "Or a proxy. Not the entity itself, but an extension of it. It looked..." Kate couldn't find the words. "Human," Sam finished. Or was trying to. I think it was mimicking human form, based on what it's observed. Or based on what it's absorbed, Kate added grimly, thinking of her brother and the other missing people. The crystalline figure remained fixed in her mind as they drove back toward town. Not quite human, not quite alien, but a terrible hybrid of both. Whatever they were facing had learned to wear human shape, had perhaps been learning for centuries, and now it knew they were coming for it. Back at the high school, chaos greeted them. A crowd had gathered in the main corridor, voices raised in fear and anger. "What's happening?" Kate demanded, pushing through to where Deputy Jensen stood guard at the nurse's office door. "The entranced people," he explained quickly. "They woke up, all at once, about 20 minutes ago. They're different now." "Different how?" Before Jensen could answer, a sound came from behind the door. That same hollow, resonant tone they'd heard in the mine shaft. "They're communicating with it," Sam realized. "Or it's communicating through them." "They started speaking in unison," Jensen said. "Not English, not any language I've ever heard. Then they tried to leave, head toward the lake. When we stopped them, they turned violent." "Let me see," Kate insisted. Jensen unlocked the door cautiously. Inside, the 12 entranced residents sat perfectly still on their cots, arranged in a circle facing inward. Their skin had taken on a pale, almost translucent quality, with a faint bluish tinge. Most disturbing were their eyes, the irises now crystalline structures that caught and refracted light in unnatural patterns. As Kate entered, all 12 heads turned in perfect unison to stare at her. Then they spoke, a single voice emerging from 12 throats, simultaneously. "The time comes. The changing begins. You cannot stop what has waited eons." The voice was hollow, resonant, identical to the sound from the mine shaft. "Who are you?" Kate demanded. A sound like ice cracking prefaced their response. "We are the cold that waits. We are the first to come. This world was ours before your kind learned to kindle fire. What do you want? Sam asked, stepping forward beside Kate. To bloom, to spread. This deep cold comes rarely to your world now. We must use it while it lasts. Using our people, Kate said, anger rising, stealing them, taking what we need, the voice corrected. As we have always done, as is our right, as the first. What about my brother? Kate couldn't stop herself from asking. David Wilkins, taken in 1975. Is he still? The 12 heads tilted in perfect synchronization, studying her with those crystalline eyes. The one called David serves, has all taken serve. They are part of the bloom now. Part of the bloom, Kate repeated, horror and rage building. You mean they're being used to reproduce your kind? Their heat sustains the change. Their flesh houses the new ones. It is an honor to serve the first. An honor. Kate stepped forward, fury overriding caution. You've kept my brother in some kind of living death for 50 years, and you call it an honor? The 12 smiled in unison, a terrible sight, with their now bluish lips and 2 perfect teeth. He lives still, in his way. Would you see? We can show you. Before Kate could respond, all 12 entranced residents raised their right hands in perfect unison. Their fingertips began to glow with that same blue-white luminescence, then emitted pulses of light in complex patterns. Don't look, Sam warned, but it was too late. The patterns formed an image in the air between them, a 3-dimensional projection showing what appeared to be one of the cocoon-like structures they'd glimpsed on the underwater camera. Inside was a human form, preserved but changed, crystalline growths extending throughout the body. The face was visible, frozen in an expression between agony and ecstasy. Kate recognized her brother instantly, exactly as she remembered him from 50 years ago. He hadn't aged a day. David, she whispered. The projection shifted, zooming in on David's face. To Kate's horror, his eyes opened, revealing the same crystalline structures as the entranced residents before her. He sees you, the 12 voices said together. He has always seen you through our eyes. We have watched you search for him all these years. Let him go, Kate demanded, voice breaking. Let all of them go. Impossible. They are part of us now. The bloom approaches completion. When it is done, our kind will spread to new waters, deep waters, cold waters, across your world. We'll stop you, Kate promised. The 12 smiled again, an expression devoid of warmth. Others have tried, in cycles past. But we are patient. We are eternal. We are the first. With that, all 12 fell silent, heads lowering in unison. The projection vanished, leaving the room feeling suddenly darker, despite the emergency lights. Did you get what you needed from the fireworks factory? Kate asked Jensen, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Yes, he confirmed. Professor Blackwood and Henderson are preparing it now. Good, Kate said, turning toward the door. Because we're doing this tonight. Whatever it takes, whatever the risk, that thing has my brother, has all of them, and I'm going to get them back, or make sure it never takes anyone else again. As she spoke, the 12 entranced residents raised their heads once more. Eyes glowing with cold blue light, in perfect unison, they began to laugh. A sound like ice cracking on a frozen lake. Outside, through the driving snow, the lights beneath the bay pulsed brighter than ever, calling, waiting, hungry for what was to come. The plan is simple in concept, Professor Blackwood explained, gesturing to the crude diagram he'd drawn on the classroom whiteboard. Difficult and dangerous in execution. Kate, Sam, Mia, and the hastily assembled volunteer team listened intently. Outside, the unnatural storm continued to rage. Temperatures now hovering at 70 below zero, beyond anything recorded in human history for this region. We transport the magnesium to the lowest accessible level of the mine. Blackwood continued. Position it at the point where the horizontal tunnel extends beneath the lakebed, then trigger a thermal reaction that will generate heat in excess of 3,000 degrees Celsius. That's hot enough to melt rock, Roy Henderson added. The thermal shock should be catastrophic to an organism adapted for extreme cold. Should be, Kate noted. It's our best option, Blackwood admitted. The entity is preparing for some kind of reproductive event. If those lights beneath the ice are any indication, it's happening soon. Tonight, Sam said with certainty. The calling has reached its peak. The marked ones are fully activated. It won't wait longer. Then neither will we, Kate decided. What's our biggest challenge? Delivery, Roy answered promptly. Getting the magnesium down there safely, positioning it correctly, and triggering it remotely. The mine shaft is dangerously unstable after decades of abandonment. And there's the entity itself, Sam added. It knows what we're planning. It will try to stop us, which is why we need a diversion, Kate said. Something to draw its attention away from the mine, while the main team positions the magnesium. What kind of diversion could possibly distract something like this? Jensen asked. Bait, Mia said quietly. All eyes turned to her. It wants living heat sources. If someone were to go out onto the ice alone, absolutely not, Kate said firmly. No one is sacrificing themselves. Not a sacrifice, Mia clarified. A calculated risk. The entity prefers to take people intact, preserve them for slow thermal extraction. If I go out there, make myself visible, it will focus on capturing me rather than killing me outright. You'd never survive the cold anyway, Blackwood pointed out. Even without the entity, exposure would kill you in minutes at these temperatures. Not with the proper equipment, Roy interjected. The mine rescue cache might still have thermal survival gear. It was designed for emergency situations in deep shafts where temperatures could plummet. This is insane, Kate protested. I can't authorize a civilian to... I'm volunteering, Mia interrupted. This is my choice, and frankly, you need me. The entity has demonstrated particular interest in people with connections to its previous cycles. I've been documenting it, studying it. There's a relationship there. A heavy silence fell over the room. She's right, Sam said finally. It would be drawn to her, and tactically, it makes sense. The diversion increases the main team's chances significantly. Kate studied Mia's resolute expression. You understand what you're risking? If this thing gets hold of you... I've seen the footage, Mia said grimly. I know exactly what I'm risking. But someone has to do this, or we all lose. After a long moment, Kate nodded. All right, but you're not going alone. I'm going with you. Sheriff Jensen began to protest. That's final, Kate cut him off. Sam will lead the mine team with Professor Blackwood and Roy. Jensen, you'll coordinate from here and maintain contact with both groups. The planning continued in detail. Equipment needs, timing, communications protocols. When they finally adjourned to prepare, Kate pulled Mia aside. Last chance to back out, she said quietly. Mia's expression remained determined. Not a chance. Besides, I've been chasing this story since I arrived. What kind of documentarian would I be if I missed the climax? Kate managed a grim smile. Just remember, our job is distraction only. We make ourselves visible, draw its attention, then evade and survive until the mine team completes their mission. And if we can't evade? Mia asked. Kate checked her sidearm. Then we fight, though I doubt bullets will do much against something that survived for millennia. An hour later, both teams were ready to move. The storm had reached impossible intensity. Snow driven sideways by gale-force winds that seemed to come from all directions at once. The temperature had dropped another 5 degrees. In the high school's maintenance garage, Kate and Mia donned the thermal survival suits, recovered from the mine's emergency cache. Silvery, insulated garments designed for extreme environments. Communications check, Kate said into her radio. Mine team reads you, came Sam's voice, distorted by static. We're en route to the site now. Jensen, you copy? Loud and clear, Sheriff. Monitoring both teams from the command post. Kate turned to Mia. Ready. Mia sealed her thermal hood, her face barely visible behind the reflective visor. As I'll ever be. They stepped out into the storm, immediately assaulted by cold. so severe it penetrated even the specialized suits. Their snowmobile started reluctantly, engine fighting against temperatures it was never designed to endure. "Keep your eyes down," Kate warned as they set off toward the bay. "Don't look directly at the lights, no matter what." Through the driving snow, they could see the ice of the bay glowing with increasing intensity, pulses of blue-white light spreading in complex patterns beneath the frozen surface. The patterns moved with deliberate intention, converging toward the center of the bay. "It's gathering," Mia shouted over the howling wind, preparing for the final stage. Kate steered the snowmobile onto the ice, moving parallel to the shore. The plan was to make themselves visible in the open, then lead any pursuit away from the mine site, giving Sam's team time to place the magnesium and set the detonator. They had traveled perhaps 100 yards when the ice beneath them shuddered. Kate braked sharply as a perfect circle began to form ahead, ice separating with geometric precision to create an opening 8 feet in diameter. "Back," she shouted, reversing the snowmobile. "Go around." They veered away from the opening, only to have another circle begin forming to their right, then another to their left. Within moments, they were surrounded by forming circles, each cutting through the thick ice with impossible ease. "It's hurting us," Mia realized. Kate gunned the engine, aiming for the narrowest gap between 2 forming holes. They shot through just as the circles completed, ice cracking behind them. "Jensen," Kate called into her radio. "We've engaged the entity. It's creating openings in the ice all across the bay." "Copy that," Jensen's voice came through, breaking with static. "Mine team has reached the entrance, proceeding as planned." The lights beneath the ice intensified, now bright enough to illuminate the entire bay. Despite the raging storm, the snowmobile's engine sputtered, electronics affected by whatever energy was emanating from below. "Look," Mia pointed toward the center of the bay. Despite Kate's earlier warning, they both found themselves staring at a spectacular and terrifying sight. In the middle of the lake, the ice was bulging upward, pushed from below by something massive. The surface cracked and split, revealing glimpses of pale, luminescent structures rising from the depths. "It's emerging," Kate whispered. The snowmobile died completely, leaving them stranded on the ice 200 yards from shore. All around them, more circular openings began to form, cutting off potential escape routes. "We need to move," Kate urged, abandoning the useless vehicle. On foot, head for shore, they began running across the treacherous surface, the thermal suits heavy and cumbersome. Behind them, the ice at the center of the bay shattered completely as something vast breached the surface, a crystalline structure of impossible geometry, glowing with cold blue-white light. Kate risked a glance back and immediately wished she hadn't. The entity defied comprehension, a vast crystalline structure rising 30 feet above the ice, its geometry shifting in ways that hurt the human eye to perceive. It wasn't solid, wasn't liquid, but something between states, phase shifting as it moved. Worse were the human-like forms visible within its translucent body, dozens of them suspended in its mass, their features distorted but recognizable. "Don't look at it," Kate warned, grabbing Mia's arm. "Run." They sprinted toward shore, but the ice beneath their feet had become treacherously slick, covered in a strange frost that formed geometric patterns with every step they took. The patterns seemed to follow them, spreading outward from their footprints. "It's tracking us," Mia gasped. Behind them, tendrils of crystalline material extended from the main mass, reaching across the ice with deliberate purpose. Where they touched, the ice transformed, becoming part of the entity itself. "Jensen," Kate called into her radio. "Status on mine team." Static hissed, then reached level 4, continuing descent, interference increasing. "Tell them to hurry," Kate urged. "It's fully emerging." They had nearly reached the shore when Mia stumbled, foot breaking through a thin patch of ice. She fell hard, the thermal suit protecting her from the worst of the impact, but not the shock of cold water that splashed over her. Kate turned back, helping her up. "Come on, we're almost there." As Mia regained her footing, a sound reached them. That same hollow, resonant tone they'd heard before, but magnified 100-fold. It vibrated through the ice, through their bodies, an alien communication that somehow conveyed both ancient patience and immediate hunger. The shore was just 50 yards away when the ice before them split open, a perfect circle forming to cut off their escape. They skidded to a halt at its edge, staring down into black water that glowed with spectral light. "This way," Kate shouted, veering to the right. Another circle formed, then another, until they found themselves on a narrowing peninsula of solid ice, surrounded on 3 sides by open water. "It's got us," Mia realized. Behind them, the main body of the entity continued to rise from the center of the bay, more human forms becoming visible within its translucent mass. Some Kate recognized from photographs of the missing Roy Hansen, the climbers, Ranger Hargrove, young Lisa Kazan. Others were older, from previous cycles, preserved exactly as they had been when taken. One form in particular seemed to move differently from the others, pushing toward the outer membrane of the entity, as if trying to reach them. Even at this distance, Kate recognized her brother's face, unchanged after 50 years, eyes open and aware. "David," she whispered. "Kate!" Mia's shout broke through her horrified fascination. "The mine! The team!" Kate forced herself to look away from her brother, activating her radio again. "Jensen, we need that thermal charge now. Static, then fragments. Level 6. Preparing the interference." The ice peninsula they stood on shuddered, beginning to break apart. Behind them, tendrils of the entity stretched across the bay, reaching for them with inevitable purpose. "We have to jump," Kate realized, pointing to the nearest shore. "Swim for it. In this cold, we'd never make it. We don't have a choice." The entity's tendrils were just yards away now, frost patterns racing across the ice toward their feet. The resonant tone grew louder, resolving into something almost like speech, vibrations that bypassed their ears and spoke directly to their minds. "Come, join, become. Now." Kate grabbed Mia's hand, and together they leapt from the disintegrating ice peninsula into the black water. The cold struck like a physical blow, punching the air from their lungs despite the thermal suits. Kate's muscles seized instantly, her body forgetting how to swim as survival instincts battled the paralyzing cold. "Surface," she commanded herself. "Kick, move." Beside her, Mia thrashed weakly, already succumbing to the cold. Kate grabbed her suit collar, kicking toward where she thought the shore must be, but in the storm and darkness, with the entity's light distorting perspective, she couldn't be certain of direction. Something brushed against her leg underwater. Not ice, but something that moved with purpose. A tendril of the entity, hunting them beneath the surface. Kate kicked harder, dragging Mia's increasingly limp form. Her own consciousness was beginning to fade, the cold reaching past the thermal suit to her core. So cold, she thought distantly. No one could survive this. The tendril wrapped around her ankle, a sensation like burning ice penetrating through the suit material. Kate tried to kick free, but her strength was failing. She felt herself being pulled downward, away from the faint glimmer of surface light. As consciousness began to fade, she saw a crystalline structure forming around her and Mia, a perfect sphere enclosing them, filled with water, yet somehow allowing them to breathe. It was impossibly cold, yet they weren't freezing to death. Preservation, Kate realized dimly. It's preserving us for later. The sphere began moving through the water, pulled by the tendril toward the main body of the entity. Through its translucent wall, Kate could see other spheres moving alongside theirs, each containing an entranced resident from town, their skin already taking on the bluish tinge of transformation. "Mia," Kate managed to whisper, her voice strange in the liquid environment of the sphere. "Stay with me." Mia's eyes fluttered open, consciousness returning, now that the sphere was sustaining them. "What? Where?" "It's taking us to itself," Kate explained, fighting to remain clear-headed. "We need to keep fighting. Buy time for the mine team." The sphere continued its journey toward the center of the bay, where the main mass of the entity pulsed with increasing luminescence. As they drew closer, Kate could see hundreds of human forms suspended within it, some recent, some clearly from previous cycles, all in various stages of transformation. And there was David, still pressing against the outer membrane, his face now clearly visible. His lips moved, forming words Kate couldn't hear through the sphere wall. "David," she called, knowing he couldn't hear her either. "We're going to free you, all of you." The sphere containing Kate and Mia reached the outer membrane of the main entity and began to merge with it. The crystalline wall around them thinned, preparing to deposit them into the larger mass. Join, become, serve the bloom. The words formed in Kate's mind, not heard, but understood at some fundamental level. With them came visions, the entity's vast history, its cycles of dormancy and awakening stretching back millions of years. Its purpose, single-minded and ancient, to reproduce, to spread to other deep cold waters across the earth. No, Kate fought against the mental intrusion. "We won't help you spread. You have no choice. The bloom comes, new waters wait." As the sphere wall dissolved completely, Kate and Mia found themselves suspended within the main body of the entity, floating in a substance neither liquid nor solid, breathable yet alien. All around them, the human forms they'd seen from outside now surrounded them, suspended in the same medium. David floated toward them, his movements jerky but deliberate. His body had been partially transformed, crystalline structures extending from his torso and limbs, but his face remained recognizably human. "Kate," his voice sounded wrong, hollow and resonant, like the entity itself. "You came, David." Tears formed in Kate's eyes, freezing instantly in the impossible cold. "What has it done to you?" "Made me part of something vast," he replied, his expression serene despite the horror of his condition. "We serve the bloom. We nurture the next generation." "This isn't you talking," Kate insisted. "It's controlling you. I am myself," David countered, "and I am it. We are becoming something new. You will join us." Other transformed humans moved closer. Roy Hansen, Lisa Kazun, the entranced townspeople, all watching with the same serene expression, all speaking with the same resonant voice. "The bloom reaches completion," they said in unison. "New waters wait." Kate fought against the substance holding her, reaching for her radio. Somehow, miraculously, it still functioned within the entity's body. "Jensen," she gasped. "Mind team status." Through layers of static, reached bottom level, setting charges now. 15 minutes. 15 minutes. They had to survive, to keep the entity focused on them rather than the mine. For 15 more minutes. "Listen to me," Kate addressed the transformed humans surrounding them. "This isn't natural. You've been taken, changed against your will. We can help you. We do not need help." They responded in unison. "We serve willingly. The bloom is everything." "David," Kate focused on her brother. "Remember who you are. Remember fishing on the bay with Dad. Remember teaching me to skate when I was 5. A flicker of something, confusion, recognition, crossed David's face. "Kate," for a moment, his voice sounded like his own. "What's happening to me?" "Fight it," she urged. "All of you, fight it." The other transformed humans began to show similar signs of confusion, the entity's control momentarily disrupted by Kate's words. The substance around them thickened, as if the entity was trying to reassert dominance over its hosts. "You cannot separate them from us." The entity's voice filled Kate's mind. "They are part of the bloom now, as you will be." Crystalline structures began forming on Kate's skin, tiny geometric patterns spreading across her exposed face and hands. Beside her, Mia experienced the same transformation, panic in her eyes. "Kate," she gasped, "it's starting to change us." "Fight it," Kate insisted. "Just a few more minutes." The entity's main mass pulsed with increasing intensity, the reproductive process accelerating. At its center, something was forming, spherical structures like eggs, each containing a miniature version of the entity itself. The new ones come. The entity communicated. Your heat, your essence, nurtures them. Be honored to serve the first. We won't be your incubators, Kate growled, continuing to struggle despite the crystalline growths spreading across her body. The cold was penetrating deeper now, reaching into her bones, her organs, beginning the transformation process that would make her like the others. David drifted closer, his expression fluctuating between serene acceptance and confused horror. Kate, help me. I am helping you, she promised. Just hold on a little longer. The radio at her belt crackled once more. Charges set. Beginning evacuation. 10 minutes to detonation. 10 minutes. They had to survive 10 more minutes. Mia, Kate called, seeing her companion's eyes beginning to glaze over with crystalline structures. Stay with me. Don't give in. The entity's reproductive process accelerated, the egg-like structures at its center growing rapidly. The transformed humans all turned toward them, expressions rapt as they witnessed the culmination of their captivity. The bloom opens, they intoned together. New life emerges. We serve, we nurture. You will join them. The entity informed Kate, your resistance is ending. Your heat sustains us. Your body houses us. Your mind joins with ours. The crystalline growths had covered most of Kate's exposed skin now, beginning to penetrate deeper. She could feel her thoughts becoming sluggish, alien concepts intruding, ancient, cold knowledge flooding in as her own memories began to fade. No, she fought against the mental intrusion. I am Kate Wilkins. I am Sheriff of Whitefish Bay. I am human. You were human. The entity corrected. Now you become more. You become first. Through increasingly clouded vision, Kate saw the egg-like structures beginning to pulse with their own light, preparing to hatch. The entity's reproductive cycle was nearly complete. 5 minutes to detonation. Her radio crackled, the sound distant and unimportant to her transforming mind. 5 minutes. Kate clung to that thought as everything else began to slip away. 5 minutes until the thermal charge. 5 minutes until heat beyond imagining would blast through the mine shaft into the entity's domain. Heat. The entity feared heat. It needed cold to thrive, to reproduce. With her last moments of clear thought, Kate made a decision. She grabbed Mia's increasingly rigid form and kicked toward the center of the entity, toward the reproductive chambers where the egg-like structures pulsed with new life. What are you doing? David called after her, his voice shifting between human and entity. Ending this, Kate replied, her own voice taking on the hollow resonance of transformation. The transformed humans moved to intercept her, but Kate was already too deep within the entity's body, approaching its most vulnerable point. The egg-like structures loomed before her, beautiful and terrible. The next generation of the ancient predator, preparing to spread to new waters across the earth. Kate activated her radio one final time. Jensen, tell the mine team, detonate now. But Sheriff, you're still... Now, Kate commanded, her voice breaking between human and entity tones. Do it now. She pulled Mia close, positioning them directly beside the reproductive chambers. Around them, the transformed humans converged, trying to pull them away from the vulnerable eggs. David, Kate called to her brother as he approached. Remember who you are. Remember who we are. For a moment, humanity returned to his eyes. Kate, I remember. The entity's voice filled their minds, suddenly urgent, almost fearful. Move away from the new ones. You must not. Far below, beneath the lake bed, the thermal charge detonated. The world became light and heat. 3,000 degrees Celsius erupted from the mine shaft beneath Lake Superior, superheated magnesium burning with blinding intensity. The thermal charge blasted upward through the horizontal tunnel, vaporizing rock, water, and ice in its path, until it reached the underside of the entity. Inside the crystalline mass, Kate felt the impact as a distant rumble at first, then a violent shudder that rippled through the entire structure. The transformed humans around her froze in unison, their shared consciousness suddenly focused on the new threat. Heat. The entity's voice filled their minds, containing an emotion Kate had not sensed from it before. Fear. Burning. Coming. The egg-like structures at the center pulsed more rapidly, the reproductive process accelerating in response to the danger. Kate, still clinging to Mia's increasingly rigid form, knew they had mere seconds before the thermal wave reached them. "David," she called to her brother, who hovered nearby, uncertainty in his crystalline eyes. "It's time to go. Time to be free." He stared at her, the struggle visible on his face. 50 years of enslavement, battling against the memory of his humanity. "Kate, I don't know if I can." "You can," she insisted. "You're still my brother." Around them, the other transformed humans began to move in chaotic patterns, the entity's control fracturing as it diverted resources to protect its reproductive chambers. The substance surrounding them thickened, hardened, creating barriers against the approaching heat. The first wave hit, not the burning magnesium itself, but the thermal radiation preceding it. The temperature inside the entity rose sharply, jumping from hundreds of degrees below zero to merely freezing in seconds. The effect was catastrophic. The entity's structure began to crack, fracture lines spreading throughout its crystalline body. The transformed humans writhed in shared agony as the sudden temperature change disrupted the alien biology that had integrated with their bodies.
"It's working,"
Mia gasped, her voice stronger as the entity's control weakened. The crystalline formations on her skin had stopped spreading, some even beginning to flake away. Kate felt the same happening to her. The cold paralysis receding, her mind clearing as the entity's influence diminished. But they were still trapped deep within its body, with a wave of incinerating heat approaching. "We need to move," she urged, pulling Mia toward where she thought the outer membrane might be. "Everyone, if you can hear me, move toward the surface." Some of the transformed humans responded, including David, struggling toward the periphery of the entity. Others remained fixed in place, too deeply integrated to separate themselves from the collective. The entity's voice grew fragmented in their minds. Protect, eggs, survive, adapt. Its remaining resources concentrated around the reproductive chambers, abandoning the transformed humans it had used for so long. Kate and Mia pushed through, suddenly less resistant material, the entity's body becoming more liquid as its complex molecular structure destabilized. The second wave hit, actual heat this time, the leading edge of the thermal charge, pushing upward through the entity's lower portions. The temperature jumped again, now well above freezing and climbing rapidly. "We're not going to make it," Mia realized, seeing the distance still remaining to the outer membrane. "Yes, we are," Kate insisted, though she knew Mia was probably right. The heat wave would reach them before they could escape. Suddenly David was beside them, his partially transformed body moving with unnatural speed. "This way," he urged, his voice more human now. "There's a faster way out." He led them through a channel in the entity's body that seemed to offer less resistance, a path Kate wouldn't have found on her own. Behind them, the heat continued to rise, the entity's inner portions beginning to boil away into steam. "The others," Kate gasped, seeing transformed humans still trapped deeper within. "Too integrated," David replied grimly. "Too far gone, like I nearly was." They reached the outer membrane just as the third wave hit, the full thermal force of the magnesium reaction. The entity released a sound that wasn't sound, a psychic shriek of agony that resonated through every mind connected to it, human and alien alike. David pressed his hands against the membrane, which had hardened in a last-ditch effort to preserve the entity's core. With strength born of his partial transformation, he tore an opening in the crystalline wall. "Go!" he shouted, pushing Kate and Mia through the gap. They tumbled out into frigid air, falling 20 feet to the ice below. The entity's body had risen fully above the surface of the bay, a massive crystalline structure now riddled with fractures and glowing with internal heat. Steam erupted from its lower portions, where the thermal charge continued to burn. "David!" Kate screamed, Seeing her brother still inside the membrane, he looked down at her, a sad smile on his face. "I can't leave, Kate. Not completely. I've been part of it too long. No, come with us. I'm bringing the others," he called, turning back into the entity's interior. "The ones who can still be saved." Before Kate could respond, a new eruption of heat and steam obscured her view. The entity's body was collapsing in on itself, its complex molecular structure unable to maintain coherence under the thermal assault. Kate and Mia crawled away across the ice, which itself was beginning to melt from the intense heat radiating from the entity. Around them, the unnatural storm was dissipating, the temperature rising rapidly toward normal winter levels. "Jensen," Kate called into her radio, surprised to find it still functioning. "We're out. We're alive." Static. Then his voice, thick with relief. "Thank God. Mine team is clear too. Everyone's accounted for." "Not everyone," Kate murmured, looking back at the disintegrating entity. The crystalline structure was falling apart completely now, chunks breaking off and dissolving into steam or strange luminescent liquid that froze again upon contact with the ice. From various points along its collapsing body, human forms emerged, some falling to the ice like Kate and Mia had, others simply dissolving into the same strange matter as the entity itself. "Some are getting out," Mia observed. "Your brother did it. He's freeing them." Kate searched the escaping figures, looking for David. Each transformed human who escaped seemed to shed their crystalline components as they left the entity, returning to more fully human form, though all retained an unnatural pallor and strange, haunted eyes. The entity continued to collapse, its reproductive chambers now fully exposed at the center. The egg-like structures pulsed frantically, their development interrupted at a critical stage. As the heat reached them, they began to rupture, releasing not new life, but chaotic energy that accelerated the entity's destruction. "It's dying," Mia whispered. "Not dying," Kate corrected. "Retreating. Look." Beneath the disintegrating mass, the ice had melted completely, revealing black water that glowed with faint blue luminescence. Portions of the entity were flowing back into the depths, not organized as before, but still alive, still conscious on some level. "We endure," its voice whispered faintly in their minds. "We wait. We return. This world was ours before your kind. It will be ours again." The final collapse came suddenly. The remaining structure shattered like glass, raining crystalline fragments across the bay. The transformed humans who hadn't escaped, dozens, perhaps hundreds, fell into the dark water below, their bodies now more entity than human, sinking into the depths with the retreating organism. And there was David, standing at the very edge until the last moment, helping others escape. He turned toward Kate one final time, their eyes meeting across the distance. He smiled, a genuine human smile, and mouthed words she couldn't hear but understood. "I love you, little sister." Then the structure beneath him gave way, and he plunged into the dark water below. "No." Kate tried to run toward him, but Mia held her back. "You can't help him now," she said gently. "The ice is breaking up everywhere." Kate watched helplessly as the last traces of the entity and her brother disappeared beneath the surface of Lake Superior. The unnatural lights faded, leaving only the normal darkness of a winter night, now oddly still as the storm abated completely. 3 months later, Kate stood at the shore of Whitefish Bay, watching spring ice break up and float away on a gentle breeze. The winter had ended abruptly after that night, temperatures returning to normal ranges within days. "Any news on the survivors?" Mia asked, joining her at the shoreline. Her documentary equipment was packed away. She would be leaving tomorrow, her story both more and less than what she had come to film. 17 people escaped the entity, Kate replied. "All taken during this cycle, none from previous ones. They're recovering, physically at least. Mentally is another question. They remember everything. And the others? The ones who went back into the lake?" Kate shook her head. "No trace. The government research team found nothing at the depths where the entity retreated. Their submersibles couldn't even reach the bottom of the eastern basin. Equipment kept failing at around 1,000 feet. Professor Blackwood approached, his academic demeanor somewhat subdued after their ordeal. "The biological samples we recovered are degrading too rapidly to study effectively," he reported. "They seem to require extreme cold to maintain structural integrity." "So we have no proof," Mia concluded. "Nothing concrete to show what happened here." "Perhaps that's for the best," Sam suggested, joining their small group. "Some knowledge isn't meant for scientific journals or government reports." Kate stared out at the vast expanse of Lake Superior, its surface deceptively peaceful in the spring sunlight. "It's still down there, isn't it, waiting?" "Yes," Sam answered simply. "Weakened, diminished, but alive. My grandmother's stories say it can hibernate for centuries, if necessary, not just 50 years. It has patience beyond human understanding." "We heard it," Blackwood pointed out. "Disrupted its reproductive cycle. That's more than anyone has managed before." "We bought time," Kate corrected. "That's all." She had resigned as sheriff the week after the incident, unable to continue in a role that required her to maintain official silence about what had really happened. The government team that arrived, men and women in unmarked vehicles with high-level clearances, had classified everything, creating a cover story about methane releases and mass hallucinations. "I'm staying," she told the others. "Someone needs to remember, to prepare for when it returns." "When do you think that will be?" Mia asked. "Not in our lifetime, I hope," Sam replied, "but someday, when the ice grows thick enough again, when the cold penetrates deep enough." They stood in silence for a moment, each contemplating the vastness of the lake and what lay dormant in its depths. "I had a dream about David last night," Kate said finally. "He was standing on the shore, watching the ice break up. He said something about cycles ending and beginning. Said he was still out there, still aware somehow. The entity absorbed him for 50 years, Blackwood said gently. "Perhaps something of it remains in him, as something of him remains in it." "You think he's alive?" Mia asked incredulously. "Not alive as we understand it," Sam clarified, "but not gone either. The boundary between human and entity was never as clear as we wanted to believe." Kate knelt and touched the cold water lapping at the shore. For just a moment, she thought she felt something respond, a distant awareness, a familiar consciousness touching her mind briefly before withdrawing. "He's out there," she said with certainty. "And so is it, waiting, watching." As they turned to leave, none of them noticed the small patch of frost that formed briefly where Kate's fingers had touched the water, a perfect circle that lingered for a moment before melting away in the spring sunshine. Beneath the surface, in the lightless depths of Lake Superior, something ancient stirred briefly before settling back into its long, patient wait. We endure, we adapt, we return. The cold that hungers would sleep again and dream of the time when the ice would grow thick once more,